Hey, what's going on, guys? I just got a message from Chris that his shirt doesn't have a back to it. So that's how it's going to go. First off, what an abrasive change from that nice, calming intro music into just loud all me. All right, so what's the DL Live? What are we doing here? Hopefully, we're talking about life learning and in some way leveling up, maybe sometimes, hopefully, and trying to have fun while we do it. So it's December 23rd. It's towards the end of the year, a year that we've had that has, in many, many ways, been unlike any other. So it felt right to talk about change and just different types of change, how change shows up in people, how it shows up in our lives, change that we choose, change that's applied to us. I know this morning I woke up and I had all these plans on doing like a pre-production and bunch of notes and stuff like that. None of it happened. It didn't. We had to change. So I'm excited to have this conversation. As somebody who started off the year in Mexico and came back in the middle of a pandemic, I know that I've changed a lot. I know that people out there have been forced to change in a bunch of different ways. And I'm excited to just have a conversation and hopefully with Chris, invite everybody to find a little space in change and maybe take a little bit of a different perspective around it. So without further ado, let me introduce to you my main man, Chris Garrett, with Powering Choice, the intersection of mindfulness and healing. He's been a big part of a lot of my change this year and our relationship and just continuing to stretch one another. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say, but I'll let him introduce a little bit about himself and whatever he has to say about change.
There it is. That's the handoff.
There it is. Take it. Do better.
I wish we could do one of those things. Here, can you hand it to me and I'll receive it?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that. They do that in magic all the time.
We've already lost control. There won't be a season 1 in Q1. There just won't happen.
Changed the whole rhythm. You see what I did there? Yeah. Talk a little bit about myself. Well, I think the first thing that just drops there is this year. I think it has been a year of change for me. And prior to this year, I was coming into it thinking, I got this. I have a good consistent roadmap of how it's going to go, how I'm going to go. It all changed, and some of it was obviously you mentioned like change applied to you. Some of that has happened, but there's also recognition of at times how I chose to respond to the change that was applied to me. So getting into a little bit more about that concept, the concept behind Powering Choice is just coming to recognize things that are typically on autopilot in our lives. And a lot of that precedes the point at which we decide to start changing it. Like we have a lot of autopilot, a lot of momentum going into our lives, things that change us. And then even our responses seem to be autopilot. So really the concept behind the mindfulness and healing work is starting to deepen the awareness and the practice around how we respond to life, how I respond to myself, how I respond to moments like this. And as you deepen it, you get a little bit more of awareness of choice in your life, a little bit more clear about where you're going and why you're going there. That's sort of what is brought forth out of the work of mindfulness and healing. And
I assume today you're just going to solve it, right? Like you're going to fix it for all of us where we just say, oh, now we just change with grace, right? Yeah. We're going to do all that today.
If that could happen, let it happen. If that could happen. Yeah. And you know what? Like the beauty of that too is it'll look different for everyone. Like that will look different for everyone. Like whatever that solving looks like. That's what I love about it too.
So that's a great place to start. I just want to throw out to everybody that's following along. Feel free to hit the chat if you're on YouTube or Twitter. Keep the questions coming. We're not only going to do a Q&A, but we'll try to pick and choose some as we roll through this. So the crazier and the weirder, the better. But hopefully, like we said, this is an opportunity to really just kind of investigate in a different way. So please do ask us or prompt us or demand of us whatever you should choose. Chris, you hit something about how change looks different for everybody. That was not where I intended to start, but let's do it. There is I feel like there's a common just perception about change, or really who we're supposed to be as people and how we are supposed to go through life, and what the appropriate or permissible response or reaction or process is to receive change in something, whether that be circumstance, relationship, status, whatever that might be. In talking about how change is different for everybody, what does that mean to you? And then how have you seen it show up in some of the work that you've done?
Oh God, I mean, just
but like the short version.
Okay, no, yeah, I hear you. And you keep me on it too. Like, hold up a little finger if
I will.
you catch me rambling a little bit, because this question goes a little bit deep and it's a little anecdotal, right? So there's room for storytelling in it, and so help me stay mindful. And so to the two elements of that question. The first one is say a little bit more about change and being unique to each individual, and maybe where I've seen it in my work, right? Those are the two pieces. So, yeah, I think I want to start with this beautiful quote that was gifted to me, and I think it's what I envision as being the engine behind change for humans, whether we see it or not. And maybe that's a little too forceful to apply to people, but it's that the longest journey that any of us can take is the journey from the head to the heart, and it's never a straight line. And so I feel like anything that any one of us does in life, we have so many choices, and our choices are determined by environments and the people who have been around us and the people who are around us. And that's different for each one of us, right? It's different for you and me just sitting here. I have a different perspective, and just seeing you, that's already going to create a different understanding of the world. I like to think about it through the perspective of twins. You have two twins going through life, and there might be
I dated a twin once, so this have my attention.
This is new news. I probably shouldn't even go here now. You have a different perspective of this already, right? So you have two little twins, and they go through life, and they might have so much that is genetically similar, but what they've showed time and time again is that their experiences in life are going to create vast differences in their character, in their personality, and how they see things. It's just how it goes, right? But I think what you're touching on is the broader sense that we have from a modern cultural perspective, which says how you respond to change should look a certain way, right? It should look like success. It should look like strength. It shouldn't look like vulnerability.
Can we talk about, like, change sucks, right? Like, in a lot of ways, can we just say change sucks? Is that fair? Is that mindful?
Well, I mean, you want to get into it.
That's a no. You're like, no, I can't agree with that, but it's not great.
It doesn't, right? Like it depends on the vantage from which you're looking at change, right? You look at your experience in Mexico, right? And there probably were some things in it at the time that was just like, wow, this is great. And then other times it's like, no, please no. But now you look at yourself at the end of the year, looking back, right? There's some little gifts in the things that you were saying no to. I'm pretty sure there were. I mean, I don't want to put that on you, but right. So that's already the kind of thing that pops up with change. So one of the things that just from what I've seen in working with people, and this is something that's probably a whole conversation unto itself, but to choose change in your life is to dedicate, is to commit an effort to dive in and do it. And I'll tell you, you can choose change now and say, I'm committed. And then next week, when the suck starts rolling and you start feeling the suck, right? There's everything inside of you that's going to activate those old patterns of yourself that are going to be like, look, I just fix it. Can we just fix it right now? I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to feel this way, right? And if you have a friend or you have someone that you're working with who can be like, I hear you, remember the commitment, come back to your practice, come back to your efforts, come back to yourself, right?
So but I think that this is such an interesting, like, let's take a tangent, since we always do anyway, and there are no rules here.
Which way?
This,
That way.
I totally forgot what I was even going to say.
Tangent.
I really did. I got two things. That I don't want to forget. One is, you mentioned change as, like, we perceive it as a straight line, that like one day we make a decision, and it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to change. Learning is the same. Like, learning is a type of change where we imagine it's just like, oh, I chose to learn today, I'm just going to climb up this mountain. Where in reality, it's more like, oh, I'm going to learn. And if it's about yourself, I feel like if you're really uncovering layers of yourself, you start to increase your awareness, and then you just fall off a cliff, like where you just feel like the change is unbearable. And you kind of live in that space until you start incrementally kind of climbing up the change. And then that process kind of repeats itself. So I've always kind of thought about, always isn't true, recently, this idea that the goal is kind of to decrease the amount of variance you have around how you change and choosing to change. But if you're in the process of change and you see the benefits, it's a lot easier to be able to say, all right, I'm going to choose to change X, Y, and Z, right? Oh, yeah. But for us to sit here and say, make the choice to change, I think a lot of people very fairly would be like, why though? Like, why do it? Because it can be incredibly painful.
Yeah. I think a theme that's coming up for me as I hear that is the theme of control. Right? Wow. Like, and that's right. You feel that, like, yeah, that, because that's a thing, right? I mean, that's a thing. It's like, if I can reduce the variance of what I'm focusing on, if I can get specific, I can control how the change looks. And I think that change is always really inviting us to take a look at how we are trying to control. That often is what it looks like, right? And we'll feel resistance, we'll hit pain points, and some of that is just a natural course, and some of it is because we're looking to control it, right? And so that resistance will come. And so then if we learn to release some of the need to control a little bit in certain moments, the resistance will dissipate with it, right? Now, I don't mean that's the case in all cases. I mean, there's certain kinds of change we can certainly talk about where, you know, there's a need to, I'm going to talk about, I'm only going to touch on this briefly, but like from a socio-political perspective, there is a need to feel a sense of control. There's a need to step into a sphere and really exemplify from a space of confidence and assertion and specificity. Where are we going? Because then we're talking about like a mass audience of people, all of whom has to know what they're saying yes to, right? So you have to have some amount of clarity that you're basically commenting on, right? There's an element of control in it that you have to touch into. But control inside looks a little bit different, right? There's a lot of process of like surrender at times when it just, control isn't going to work.
So some stuff that you hit on right there, right, is we totally agree around control. I think it gives us a feeling of safety and security, where we can say, oh, I have control of this thing. I can define it. I can label it. I understand the input output. I will do A and I will get B. What I have found to be tremendously difficult for myself, even in like a multi-year process of trying to uncover just the shit that's in there, just trying to bring it out, is just saving emergent space, where it's not getting into a position where a change has been applied, where you feel out of control or overly weighed down, and just holding space for whatever shows up. And as somebody that's been geared to be super productive and more type A, and in that journey of head to heart, to justify and kind of understand the value of just holding space to reflect and see how you feel, and kind of pulse check emotional questions of like, oh, okay, I've noticed I'm a little angry. That's strange. Why am I angry? Like, what could have led to this today or yesterday or this week, or what's going on in my life? I find it very difficult even still now to just say, okay, well, I'm just going to go for a walk and just see what shows up. I don't know. That's just a statement. I don't know if there's a question in there.
Well, no, it's not quite, but actually I'm thinking more like a question, because the sort of change, at least that we're talking about right now, is sort of more the deep personal change, right? And the process that's taking place as we walk that path of change, right? What I'm curious about with you, actually, and I've known it to be, no?
No, come on. This
No?
is the best part. Yeah, do it.
Right, like having been sort of an observer of your experience in going through all of this, did you know, as you went to Mexico, were you going to Mexico with this thought in your mind, like, I'm going there to basically catalyze change? Was that an intentional choice?
Yeah, it was, but I think for the first time, I mean, what really happened is I felt like I had reached a plateau where I had investigated myself in the way that I knew how, and I felt like I just had to shake everything up to get a completely different life experience just to see what showed up. Like, I didn't feel like I had enough awareness or experience in different sets of like impressions and environments and cultures and communities and just values and priorities to really be able to say, okay, now I've really stretched my understanding of self. So the decision to book a one-way ticket to Mexico and then end up living there 6 months was really, I felt like I had hit a wall where it's like, I don't feel like I can grow anymore in my current environment. I was seeking out change and I thought that would be the catalyst. But I think for the first time, I didn't know where or how or when I would change. And then looking back, it was like, if only you knew. Like, would I go back and do it again? Sure. Did I enjoy it all? No, absolutely not.
Wait, can you talk? I don't know if you want to put any of this out there, but I'd love to hear an example of a moment when you said, I'm not enjoying this.
Like, oh yeah, I mean,
what it meant to move through it.
Yeah, I'll give kind of like some different levels. The first one would be, I mean, like our water just shut off, just stopped working a couple different times. And when you're in a foreign environment, that can be kind of alarming because you don't even really know what your options are as far as having any type of control over that situation. And then all of a sudden, something that you take for granted, a very needed resource, is suddenly unavailable. And that kind of throws you into like a completely different reality of, oh shit, now I need to worry about this thing that I have been privileged not to have to worry about in the past. And now that's going to change up my routine. Like, should I not shower? I'm used to drinking almost a gallon of water a day. Do I not do that? Like, how am I going to get my coffee? Real important things. The second, so that was one. When the pandemic hit, my introduction to the pandemic, aside from the people that I was staying with, just having conversation around it, was there was a like 1984 Chevy Nova that just drove around with huge speakers on top of it. That was just like, do not go outside. And all of this is in Spanish and stuff. And it was just kind of surreal. I felt like I was in this like World War Z type of environment. And then the third tier that I'll give is I did ayahuasca, which is an ancient medicinal tonic. It's a hallucinogen, and it's used a lot to really investigate self and with other functions too. But so after I did ayahuasca, the learning was offensive. Like, it was just so dense and continuous. Like, I'm not even kidding. I couldn't step outside with being like, that step has educated me to be wiser. And I reached a point where it had gone on for like 3 weeks, Chris, like 3 weeks after like that kind of first week of settling in. And I think in one of our masterminds, I might have even mentioned it, where I was just like, I'm done, y'all. I can't learn anymore. Like, I just can't. There's nothing left. I have no energy, and these learnings are just assaulting me in everywhere I look. And it really became painfully dense. Even though I was appreciating it, it became just a slog for like over a month. And then like just extrapolating that out and talking about like change as a point in time, there was nothing profoundly new that I feel like I discovered, but the specificity and how I related to those things kept uncovering itself. So even I think beforehand, I would have said, I have a pretty high awareness of who I am and that type of deal, but I didn't until I was just raw and just vulnerably exposed to self. But even now I continue to process the learnings and the invitations that I received in that process, but then the years prior to that. And like, it just keeps showing up. Fortunately now, much further spread apart. Like I can sit here and smile and have a good day. I don't have to wake up feeling like I'm going to a dissertation every day. But
Yeah.
I expect for that to be a lifelong journey of learning. And it's something that I think, to me, changing your relationship with change to be one where it's always changing, finding comfort and balance in the always dynamic, I think gives you so much power over controlling whatever is presented to you or whatever you choose to take on as far as change goes. But yeah, I'm sure I could come up with other I mean, there were different relationships that were great and then went sideways. I mean, there was just so much change in Mexico and so much pain. If you told me on paper that I had to go through all the stuff that I had to go through to get to this point where I feel like I appreciate the different versions of myself and like really truly appreciate all of them, I'd be like, well, that sounds great, but I don't think I would have had the relative value of how meaningful this is versus what it was that I had to go through in order to kind of discover that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that speaks to something you were saying to me, in sort of like the pre-show, right? Which is that change isn't a thing that happens. It's not just about the point in time. It's a process, and that's not to say that there can't be a sudden change that happens instantly, right? But then whatever that evokes itself is a process, right? The whole being is in continuous change. And sometimes I think the way that it feels is like, oh, something shifted and now I have to play catch up and figure out what it was. Right. But something changed and now I need to understand more about it. Right. So like the mind keeps wanting to play the understanding game. It plays the knowledge and container game. Let me put it in labels. Let me get it in a way that I can understand it. Right. And the thing about that is that it can keep doing that. It'll grab that one little thread. It'll be like, that's it. That's it. And then it starts layering things on top of it. Right. And now it has a little stack of understanding in this beautiful little container it's constructed for itself. And then suddenly, boom, it falls over. You're like, oh, I guess that wasn't it, was it? And then it commends itself for seeing something new. Like there's this whole process that keeps happening up here. And so hearing like the different layers you talked about made me think about, and look, this is my perspective because this is the realm I work in, but I think especially for earlier years in life, like as a human being, a lot of the change that we're doing is learning the extent to which we think we can actually control things, right? How much influence I can have in the world. And some of that is, in this culture is determined by a measure of success, whatever that means to you. How much influence can I have? How much can I change things out there? Right? And how can I make people think that I look a certain way and that I'm being a certain way and that I'm certain strength, right? That's all like on the external side. I think there comes a point in life where for some people they start to say, I feel like something isn't quite right. I feel like I'm missing something somewhere. And maybe it comes in little glimmers, little sparks. It's just like, I'm missing something. So then we start to do that like interchange, which it sounds like Mexico in a way was for you, like, how do I create more room for this interchange? And how do I really...
I didn't ask, Chris. It just did it. You know what I mean? I didn't ask it to happen.
Yeah, I think you did. You know what?
That's fair.
From the outside, I think you did. I remember how psyched you were to go to Mexico and be like, it's going to change.
Gonna be a whole different person.
Oh man, yeah. Well, and you are,
Right.
right?
But
And
also not, which I think we've had a lot of conversation around is this idea, you know, in looking at myself, I think I have a tendency to personify different versions as like different people. But then that implies that like they don't play together and they're not all one person. And then you get trapped in this, well, I'm leaving one behind and I'm stepping into a new one type of deal. And that's really not how it works. As someone who painfully worked through that process. I want to ask you one thing. You started to go down the road of like the start of what personal change can look like when something presents itself. We just like, oh, life isn't right. Like whether it's a midlife crisis, whether it's just this feeling inside where you're like, man, just been kind of sad more than I normally am, or I'm dissatisfied with my community and relationships. If someone was just starting this process, like what do you think the most important preface is, or the like starting, just how do you get started, man? How do you start?
it's the first step in the 12-step program, man.
You need to change.
I have a problem. You know, you're just identifying it. You're like, oh, there's something happening here. There's a little bubble in the tummy, you know, like something's not right and I can't ignore it. Right. Like that is honestly like this, and this theme actually runs throughout the entire journey. You're naming it to tame it, right? But the way that you name it will change. Okay. So that's what's happening. It's like right up top, you're just like, oh, I got something going on here. And I think I need to give it attention, whatever it is. That's the start.
I think I found two things really jumped out to me because I was thinking about this before the conversation, and I said, what you got?
It's just no. That I love the. I'm just putting some shine on statements we make sometimes. Two things jumped out at me. I use that too, but I'm imagining something like jumping out at you. It's just like, and you're like, whoa, hang on, I got you.
Wait, that seems like a perfect cue. Hey, Caroline, throw me in the snow globe. This is totally unrelated.
But can we? Yeah, snow globe time.
Can we throw me in the snow globe? Ah! Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but inside it's so delightful. When there's no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Nobody needed that, but we gave it to you anyway, because it's holiday time. All right, take me back out. That's what jumped out at Chris was the snow globe and the sing-along song.
Yeah, that was good. I love that. I got to take a little break. I got to watch you do the whole thing, and it was so great. I love how you just did it. That was nice.
We have won.
We win. It's a winning time. Okay, so can you? So
right, two things.
Bring us back.
Yeah, and then we'll take some questions and stuff. We probably have time for one more topic after this. So if you have anything top of mind, go ahead and throw it in the chat. If not, we'll make up our own. Kindness jumped out first, of something that I was not good at in the process of change. Is for a long time I was terribly unkind to myself, and I don't mean like punching myself or even like specific negative talk where it's like you're stupid or you can't do this. It wasn't even like that, but I had such expectation of where I should be versus where I was that it created this perpetual incompleteness of not doing enough and not getting there because I was looking at it as a result, and I was so far away from where I reality is like where I was programmed, where society deemed that I should be right now, or how I should feel, or what it should look like, that the process would have been so much easier if I didn't waste so much energy fighting myself being unkind. That's number one. And then number two was how much value community added in my process of even if it's hearing the same thing, or even if it's just questions. And I'm not talking about just randomly go ask for advice from someone who has no experience with you or in this type of space, but there's so much that can be uncovered just by having somebody mirror you and be like, okay, well, yeah, I heard all the words that you said, but what I feel is that you're angry as shit and that you hate elephants for some reason. I'm not sure why. Like, those two things to me, if we can create more kindness, not only towards ourselves, but towards other people. I mean, think about this year and the amount of change that everybody has gone through, but I mean, really catastrophic change of changing relationships, losing people, livelihoods disappearing. What does next look like? All the racial inequality stuff that's going on in 2020. I mean, there's so much chaos that's going on right now. I think it's safe to assume that every other person is going through their own type of change. And that could be true for all points in time. But I think in particular this year, to be able to receive someone and hold space if you can, if you're not using all of your energy to hold your own space, but inviting kindness to other people as they work through the process and doing it in community where you feel safe and supported, but really starting to work that muscle and learn that skill, because it's not like I didn't get taught how to write a check, which was really embarrassing because my mom made fun of me when I opened a check, because she was like, "What do you mean you don't know how to make a check?" Love you, Mom. Ride or die fan right there. I know she's here. And then I forget what the other thing was. But like you don't learn this stuff growing up, and then one day you're just like, oh gosh, I'm not right, or life's not right, or my relationship isn't right. I got to do something. I got to fix it. Change has to happen. But then you have no idea how to go through that process. And everybody makes you feel like you're supposed to just be right? Like you're supposed to just figure it out. At what point in time, like I want to know, is it like when you're 7, when you're 13, when you're 24, when you're 68? When do you hit the milestone at which you're not supposed to change anymore? Like you're not supposed to learn anymore. You're not supposed to grow anymore. You're not supposed to be scared of anything anymore. Like, this is some bullshit. And like, now I'm angry. I'm just angry at the setup. But it's crazy. All of that kindness and community. That was long-winded. Why didn't you stop me? Throw up. I got a different story. That'll have to be a different time. But
sometimes you just gotta let it happen, man. I was just letting it happen. It was good. I just want you to know it was good.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. No, good. That hit me like it struck me. Like there really was so much. I feel like I could just listen to that little bit over, and every time I'd hear it, I would hear things that have applied in my life in different ways, in my own experience, because it's all unique. But there's definitely a lot in it. And you started with kindness. So there's a few things I just want to hit real quick, because I know we're kind of going to leave some space here for audience questions. But starting with kindness, there's a modality of communication called nonviolent communication, and that whole construct is really it's not the violent is the word, but it's really reconceiving the way that violence happens. So it's really saying, if I'm saying I should be a certain way, that's violence to myself. I mean, it's an exaggerated use of the word, but I'm not allowing kindness. It's to say, if I think I should be somewhere, then it's saying that where I am is not right. I am wrong. That's what's happening, right? That's violence to the self. Yeah. That's forceful. It doesn't feel good. You got to think.
No, it jumped into my mind also how much easier it is to see. And I'm not saying it's easy to see in other person necessarily, but it is easier to become aware of someone else's like disconnect between maybe where they are and where they want to be. But then when you turn around and look at it yourself, it's like, oh no, there's all these inputs and all this noise and all these factors, and I just can't. It's very opaque.
Well, you said earlier, you were talking about the things you didn't learn, like you didn't learn how to write a check, but the thing that we're talking about is we don't learn how to change. We don't, That's not a thing that you learn in school, right? Like schooling isn't about teaching you this. This is a hopeful byproduct that you get out of just being human amongst humans. But I'll tell you, it's just what you said. I think a large part of our culture in some ways seems counter change, right? Unless it's the change that's going to make you more money, make you more successful, make you stronger, like externally stronger. But that's not the real change that we're all, I feel like, constantly being pulled back into, right? And sometimes despite ourselves or in spite. I never know how that goes. In spite of ourselves or
Despite. I think it's in spite.
in spite of ourselves.
I don't
Despite
know.
is angry. So in spite of ourselves, it happens. We're being pulled back in, being encouraged to be like, you don't know how to write that check? You get frustrated by it. You got to stumble. You got to make mistakes, and then in doing it, you get to learn a thing or two, not just about like how to do things in society, but about yourself.
Yes, like +1 to all of that. But I feel like that comes back to that safety and security and trust thing, that like safety and experimentation and exploration and discovery. And so many people don't feel like they have space for that, whether it be in community or of themselves, to be like, oh, I can jump out and test this thing.
Right.
Like society and our own talk builds up things to be permanent. Right? So then it's like, it's this huge type of decision. Do I jump off the cliff? Where the reality is like, you can start testing and iterating with change in very small, safe buckets, but you have to choose. Boom, powering choice plug, poweringchoice.com. Chris, intersection of mindfulness and healing. Got it in there. Definitely. But you do have to choose. And you have to choose to start experimenting.
Yeah.
And the shitty thing is how do you sell someone where you're like, look, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better?
Well, so let's say this one thing, there's only one thing that.
This is great. This is going to be, I'm going to let you finish it, and then we're going to turn to some audience questions.
Okay, cool.
If there are any. I like this. There's one thing.
There's one thing. We touched on control earlier, right? Control as a theme that shows up in this whole change process thing, and really a lot of resistance shows up when we're trying to control, when control is our focus and our intention without us knowing it, right? But there is one thing that all of this should that all of this points at us learning, and it's that we can't control what's out here most of the time. The only thing we can actually learn to control in a way that will benefit us in everything is our response to the things that are happening out there, right? And that itself is a process. I mean, I can say that to someone, but they're going to be like, what do you even mean, bro?
Yeah.
What? No.
And even I was like, well, yes, and,
right? And so, like, there's plenty of people that are so caught up in what's happening out here, and in fact, to a large extent, a lot of it is what's happening out here is traumatic. It shakes the nervous system, it shakes the psyche, the psychological process of being human is shaken, and all it can do is survive. And when it's in survival mode, it's not trying to be introspective. It's not trying to be, let me see how I can respond to this
Leave me alone
here. It's not going to do that. But if there is even a moment where that individual who's caught up in that response is invited, usually by someone else, to just pause, right? And that doesn't, they might not feel safe. But if the person they're with feels safe, that invitation is enough to see, just for a second, something different. And that can start a whole journey.
I don't know if I liked listening to what you were saying, or just that voice of an angel you have, where I'm just like, just put me to bed. Put me to bed.
Calming Stories by Christopher Garrett.
We've hit so many topics, right? Like, we could talk about control, we can talk about change, process, all this type of stuff. I just want to appreciate you for being here and for being a part of my change process. You've added a ton of value to me along the way, and I look forward to seeing what else I uncover as a person, just in our community and in our relationship. What I want to do now is throw it out to Q&A land, to the audience, if there is one. So if you have any questions, throw it out. If not, Chris and I will kill a little bit of time with a speed round, which this is the first Chris has heard anything about it. So how it's going to work is each one of us will come up with 3 questions, and we're just going to fire them at the other person. It can be anything that we want. Hopefully it'll add some value or be funny or neither of the above. Who knows? Would you like to go first or second?
Wait, hang on.
Oh, question. It appears you are mainly discussing wanted change in response to the feeling that something isn't right in you. Forced change seems very different to me. Comments? Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Chris, you want to take this one or you want me to go first?
Oh, you hit it. You hit it. Do it.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the question and love you. That's from my mom. Yeah, applied change. If something is applied to you, I feel like there's a whole extra step or steps to the process of even receiving that change. And Chris, I'd be interested to hear just in your work if it shows up differently or specific stages that you've worked through with people. Yeah. But for me, if I choose to change or something swells up in me and I go, I need to change, I might not like that thing, but I'm then choosing something that feels still in control, right? Like I still have control of that decision and I can opt out at any point in time. Completely agree that applied change feels different. It's not asked for, and then a lot of times it's not expected. I mean, for example, hello, pandemic. Nobody well, some people eventually expected it, but I mean, no one was going to work that day and said, you know what, this will be the last day in the office. And I think that comes back to, it highlights even more the kindness and growing in community. I think when something is applied to us, especially if we don't have experience in it, we get pressured into this position where we feel like we're just supposed to be able to manage it. And there's this frustration, like we didn't ask for it. Like this shit isn't fair, right? Like this, I didn't do anything wrong. Why is this fucking up my life type of thing? So even being able to receive that, I feel like takes even more work to have a neutrality relative to what's been applied to you. And then be able to say, okay, let me really understand how I'm responding to this. How do I feel? What is it creating within me? And then where am I right now versus where I would like to be? And what choices and what energy can I really choose right now that might start me stepping in that direction? But the reality is, like, if we don't have community and this isn't something we've experienced before, like it hurts me to think about, because there's so many people out there that are isolated that don't have this skill set, this tool belt, or people to help them walk through these types of circumstances in life. And it's really, really hard. And then you feel like you've done something wrong, like you're just not built right. I should be able to handle this. And then that dominates a lot of your energy. So I know I'm rambling, but I think it's a great question and it's a great point. I think that the process itself is very similar, but the ability to even receive it and make that choice has other layers of just unfairness that make it a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can't read this question without thinking of like tremendously dramatic events that are sudden. I think the movie with the Rock, where like there's a giant earthquake and then San Francisco goes in the water and he's having to respond to all these buildings falling. It's crazy. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but like
sounds like a horrible movie.
Actually, because it's the Rock, it's great.
Okay,
so,
all right.
That's my opinion. So there's catastrophic events that occur, and we're talking like usually natural disasters, like huge events that will shake life for so many people. There's a lot of death, there's a lot of wounding, there's a lot of loss, and there's a lot of instant transition of the life you knew to the life that suddenly you don't. So when I think of forced change, I think of something like that, because whoever you were and however you were responding to life up until that point is the thing that's going to funnel into how you respond, right? And so in the moment that that change happens, if you're not like a survivalist, I mean, you might be shit out of luck, you know? But I think a part of the question that comes up for me here is, and because we have the luxury right now to talk about this as a hypothetical, right? Um, and maybe this is a question that arises in the moment change happens, but what kind of outcome are you attached to? Now, as a baseline, we're attached to living. So the first one is, how do I just keep living? How do I stay alive? So we're talking about a big catastrophic event, that's going to determine what you do, you know? How do I stay alive? But if we're not just talking about how do I stay alive, but how do I thrive, which tends to be the question on a lot of people's minds, right? If you're not, I think, you know, one of the things I worked with Syrian refugees in Turkey, and so Syria is still in crisis, and they've been in crisis for about 8 years now. Huge catastrophic changes have taken place. That was applied. That was forced change for most of the people. Extreme displacement occurred. The life that people knew prior to that, can't say it was entirely peaceful, but many of them had been pushed out of their country if they wanted to survive. First response was, how do I just live? Once they got out of it, they flooded into places around Europe. We're talking not just Turkey, but various other countries that were willing to take refugees, right? Seeking asylum. So in working with these individuals in Turkey, I worked with them in the capacity of them looking to become entrepreneurs in an entirely new society. And some of them had just been recently displaced. And here they were saying, you know, I've lost people. I've watched people die. And all I can do right now is just keep going. Not just because for them at that point, it was both. It was, how do I live and how do I thrive? But I'll tell you, for them to have that kind of character at that point, something could have switched. But I also think something must have created a momentum for them to ask that question of themselves in the first place. What character were they building before they got there? And then once they got there, having survived, what does thriving look like? What kind of outcome are they driving towards? That's going to determine what change looks like for them, right? Yeah. And so this, I think at the end of it all, the question that keeps coming up for me is, what outcome do I want to see for myself, and how attached am I to that outcome, right? A lot of the space that I work in specifically, it's really marrying, it's ultimately, it's peeling back the layers of how I think life should be, just to be more in the experience of life without being attached to an outcome, which means shit can hit the fan. And the way that I would see it is, shit hit the fan, right?
Yeah. Oh, that was so much more eloquent than mine. I loved it. Loved it.
This is some real stuff. Your mom
Yeah.
brought some stuff out. She brought some stuff out.
What jumped out towards the end of your conversation was also this notion of meeting people, meeting yourself where you are, right? Like even if you're choosing to change, whether it's been applied or just a general choice that you're making, that attachment element to where you want to be is so such it's just like a Trojan horse. It's inside of the fort already, just waiting to mess stuff up, because you wherever it is you see yourself wanting to be, the reality is, at least for myself, the more work I did on myself, the less true that became. Like, even where I was trying to get, is as aggressively as I was trying to get there, turns out not the right destination for me. So that's one. But then two is, how can you really expect yourself, like if you just jump outside yourself, how can you expect yourself to make positive step and change and momentum if you have this binary outlook on, I am or I am not, I'm there or I'm not there, I am right or I'm wrong as a person? just saying, oh gosh, I don't have anything I can give today. Like, I know I don't feel good. I would like to change this, but saying, okay, today's not the day for me. Like, I know I don't have that. Like, that's tremendous kindness in meeting yourself where you are, which I feel like is just another hurdle in the process. So like, come on, man, you should be better. It's not the case.
I love that you keep bringing kindness back, though. You know, like, and I refer to it. I think kindness is a wonderful way to refer to it, and I also refer to it as compassion. And I like compassion because compassion, if you trace its roots back, literally means to be with suffering, to be with suffering. Yeah. And I feel like when you say kindness, that's what you're, you know, how do I be with this or be with that out there that I feel like is causing this, right? How do I be with that? And it doesn't mean, look, be super passive. I'm not talking about passivity. That's a different thing, right? Like, this is an active process of being with something. Yeah. I love that you keep bringing up kindness. I mean, I wish, you know, so my partner, Glory, she's a teacher. She works with kindergartners. And this might not be all teachers' philosophies, but she says, if her kids can walk away with one thing at the end of the year, look, she'd love them to be able to do math and read words, but if there's one thing she wants them to walk away with, it's kindness. It's kindness. You keep touching into it, and I feel it in my body.
I had it. It struck me. My Mexico fam. Give a shout out to them. I don't remember the exact words or the first. Like, I forget what the first. There's only two pieces, and I forgot the first part. But it was something like she was checking in with her son before he went to school for the day, and he's like 4, and the check-in was something to the extent of, "All right, are we going to do the best we can?" And he's like, "Yes." And then she's like, "And are we going to do it with kindness?" And he's like, "Yes." Like, how powerful is that? If you're doing the best you can with kindness, like, we just fixed a whole bunch of shit. Fixed it. Well, I didn't. Kim did. Appreciate you. Thanks for that.
Nice, Kim. Get it.
Okay.
Get it.
All right. Let's wrap it up. For everybody that spent time with us today, sincerely appreciate it. We're going to be launching season 1 next year. There's going to be 8 episodes. There'll be more information about that. You can either go to the YouTube page, which is the DL, or where else can I go? Oh, website, thedl.life. You'd think it's
dude,
cool.
I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go there right now.
It was cheaper. It was cheap. Like, the life thing plays, but it was just cheaper than the .com. I also want to throw out for Chris, if anybody is looking to step into more of this type of experience for themselves, I could not be a larger advocate for Chris and the amount of value that he has added in my life. So I truly, truly, truly would recommend that you check out Powering Choice and follow his journey, because it's gonna be one with magic. So Chris, I'll let you throw anything else you want to throw in there, and then I'll take us out.
First, I just went to your website. So cool. So cool. I didn't even know.
You can thank Caroline, who also, oh God, I forgot Caroline. She's behind the scenes. She's making it all happen.
She is behind the scenes.
The wizard.
I wish we could just pull her in. Boop. There's Caroline.
Thank you, Caroline. She also is doing the website. And
there's a little thingy. Oh man. No. You know what? I just, for the record, and I'd love to throw it in there too. You know, having worked with you, Dalton, throughout the year in different capacities, in different ways, and I don't mean like worked with you in your process, but like in parallel, as well as with you, and just showing up. You've always invited me into just being who I am, and you know, and wherever I am, and it's always just been, it's been just right. So definitely, I feel like, you know, we're here today with each other because of how we show up with each other. And so it's just a testament to how much I value you and how you show up. Yeah, the DL.life, everyone.
All right, great. That's it. Let's shut it down. Everybody, take some kindness. Take some kindness. Just pull it out of a basket. I think my challenge to everybody, including myself, would be over this holiday period and end of the year and beginning of the year, intentionally block out some space just to have space with yourself. and see what comes up, and be kind in that process. And
yeah,
you don't have to get anywhere with it. Just see what happens. So happy holidays. Best end of the year. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay weird, and we'll see you guys next year. Snow globe.
Yeah, can we do snow globe? This is the perfect time. I got this dreadlock.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. What's up?
We'll just mail this out on the Christmas cards. It's just happy holidays. Caroline, take us out.